Retail Media Stage. My name is Sam Knights, I'm the CEO of SMG, and I'm delighted to be here today co-hosting with MadFest. What an amazing event, and it's so good to see it all packed out to the back as well today. We've got a day packed full of content, as the guys just said. We've got a stage full of industry leaders, one just about to join, and we'll be covering every corner of retail media. And I hear there's going to be a very, very average band on at the end, which please don't take as a professional band, but we will try our best. But it's my job today to talk a little bit about why we're here, set the scene for the day, and why all the noise we're hearing about retail media and commerce media. And what we're finding is that commerce media is changing the landscape completely. It's not new. Those of you that have been around a while will remember it as shopper marketing, you remember it as trade marketing, but it's evolved hugely over the last 5 to 10 years. And there's a lot of hype, rightly so, and there's also a lot of stuff out there that isn't true. And so what we're going to try and do today is cut through some of that hype and get to the truth of the matter. And I'm here to set that scene. So, how did we get here today? Now, my days in marketing started 20 years ago, back at Procter & Gamble with a few that I can see friendly faces in the room. And in those days, TV was king. We were taught to advertise above the line, spread mass awareness, drive people into the store, and then at that point, we handed it over to our shopper marketing teams to think about how to address and convert. Now that created desire, drove people into store, but that changed very rapidly. And about 15 years ago, we saw the digital revolution. The world got more fragmented. From this one-to-many communication that we did as marketeers, we moved to a one-to-one communication. And as consumers, we could pick the brands that we wanted to hear from for the first time. We could select the messages that we wanted, and we could skip through those that we didn't. And so as marketeers, we needed to change. And the way that we went to market had to change. And actually the stores themselves started to change too. Grocers became more interested in how they showed up, the messages that they had in store, and the ownership of their space in their stores as well. And over the last 15 years, we've seen a huge change. And it's driven by 3 key factors, which has driven the birth of commerce media as we see it today. The first is the way that we shop has changed fundamentally. 20 years ago, we used to think we did a big shop in an Asda or a Tesco, and we would build our plans for that shop, and as we walked into that store, we became into a shopper mindset, moving from a consumer mindset. However, these days, we shop all the time. I don't know about you guys, but I've shopped on Instagram this week, I've shopped on Amazon, I've shopped in the co-op, I've done 2 or 3 big shops, and I've also been to shopping centers as well. And so we're always shopping. And the media that we're consuming, a lot of it can direct to a purchase straight away. So that idea of brand media versus retail media, well, that's breaking down because all media can become commerce media and retail media. And the second piece is that we're seeing a big change in the way that we buy digital advertising. Hands up who knows about the cookie and the deprecation. I'm sure everybody in this room will have heard a lot about that over the past 10 years. And that means that we're not able to target consumers digitally in the same way that we used to. And so brands are looking for ways of understanding consumer behavior and finding audiences that link to purchase. Who has that data? Well, the retailers have it. They have it in the shape of ad card, they have it in the shape of club card, they have it in the shape of the co-op membership. And these pools of data allow us to understand consumer profiles, allow us to understand buying behavior, but critically, because of the advancements of tech, we're able to link that into our ability to target these consumers anywhere they see a digital ad. That can be all the way up the funnel to CTV, all the way through to off-site digital display, all the way through when they come into a store and see a digital advert. And crucially, we're able to understand what they then go on to do. So do they then actually go on to purchase that product? So if you'd have told me 20 years ago when I started at P&G that not only can you find your audiences really effectively, but you can also target them and then find out whether they go on to buy and deliver a return investment, I would be telling you that would be the holy grail. But the reality is that that's possible today. One thing that hasn't changed over all of that time is this, that if somebody's going to become a consumer of your product, if somebody's going to move to consideration to purchase, quite simply what happens is they have to go through a purchase point. They have to buy that product either online or in store or through a third party. And so the store or the shelf or the virtual shelf is the only place that's guaranteed to reach your consumer. And so when you look at the power of commerce media and you look at this undeniable fact, it's no surprise that we're seeing a huge growth in this industry. How do we define it? Well, we define it as any media that is owned or operated by a retailer or that is targeted using retailer data. It's incredibly targetable, it's incredibly measurable, and it's connected. And as a result, we've seen phenomenal growth. So if we can just click on, we can see here a chart that's from the IAB that shows the growth in spend in different types of media going all the way back to 1980, just before I was born. And here you can see the growth of linear TV, a surge in investment. This is in Germany as a test market. You can see this was growing at a CAGR of around about 80% over those years. This is what we're seeing in retail media on the right-hand side. So you can see the CAGR here of retail media is growing at the same pace TV was in the 80s. And actually, if you take out Amazon, this line shows you everything but Amazon, it's growing at a faster CAGR. Retail media is growing faster than Meta did, it's growing faster than TV did, and it's growing faster than digital. It will get to the point digital did in half the time in terms of the spend. And so this is a growing and important part of the media mix. In fact, we expect it to be about 20% of global ad spend, not next year, but the year after, 2027. Just think about that, 20% of global ad spend in 2 years, worth 220 billion. And as a result, we're seeing a proliferation of RMNs. We see 250 globally, and it's becoming a saturated market. But we're also seeing more opportunity than ever. People in this room and some incredibly talented agencies are allowing us to do more with this data than we ever could before in terms of measurement, targeting, and delivery as well. And there's some incredibly exciting developments every day. But this opportunity also creates complexity. And so we need to build this industry very, very carefully. And so as we go through today, you'll hear from people all over the industry. Different people from different retailers, different brands, different providers. But here's a few questions that I think you should be asking yourself as we go through the day. Number one, how do I ensure that commerce media is not siloed in my organization? If I'm a retailer, how do I make sure that my retail media network is central to my strategy? If I'm a brand, how do I make sure that I don't have a retail media team that sits separate from my brand team? Secondly, how do we ensure that we create truly omnichannel campaigns? I was always taught that customers don't see media, they see campaigns. They don't see singular channels. And so if you're dealing with retail as a separate channel to brand, you're probably getting something wrong. And the same is true for retailers as well. How do you make sure that you're planning what you're doing in your retail media alongside what you're doing everywhere else? Number three, how do we ensure that we measure its impact transparently and consistently? It's so close to the point of purchase that if you do not measure retail media, it's a crime. Make sure that you're measuring every pound that you spend. And finally, let's not forget that we're marketeers and we need to put the customer first. Campaigns only work when they're right for the brand, when they're right for the retailer, and crucially, when they're right for the customer. So with that, I could think of no better person to come up and join me than the Chief Customer Officer of the Co-op Media Network. This is a guy who has had a background at P&G, Misguided, at TVG, and others, who really understands how retail works, but also how customers work. So I'm delighted to bring up to the stage the brilliant Kenyatte Nelson. How you doing?
Yeah, good, good.
Can everyone hear Kenyatte?
You guys hear me all right? Is that all right? Yeah.
All right. Welcome to the stage.
You teed me up to be brilliant. I'm not making any promises whatsoever.
I know you will be. So let's start by getting a bit of background.
Yes.
So can you tell me a little bit about your experience in the retail space?
Yes.
And what attracted you to this kind of industry?
Absolutely. So I worked, like Sam, at Procter & Gamble for 16 years, 10 in the US, another 5 or 6 in Geneva, Switzerland. And at that point, around 2015, I suppose it was, I started to look at the marketplace and I saw something really interesting happening, I thought. You had people who, like myself, enterprise marketeers, who had come from companies like Reckitt, companies like P&G, and then you had people who were coming from the eBays and the Amazons of the world, more B2C and more digitally enabled. And that group thought that my group were dinosaurs. We were the idiots. We were getting left behind. And then we kind of sort of thought, you're giving all your money to Google, you're an idiot, they're wasting your cash, right? I thought the truth was in the middle, as most things are. And I felt like there was an opportunity for me to go do something different. Yeah. I didn't have the pedigree to go move to an Amazon or an eBay. So I thought retail could be an interesting thing because it gets you closer to customer, to your point, closer to the purchasing decision, and you move away from creating demand to harvesting it. And that's how I got into B2C and to pure play. Yep. And my journey from kind of sort of FMCG into digital marketing in that context.
Amazing. And so when did you join the co-op? It was?
2023, I think it was.
2023.
I joined the co-op.
And what did you learn about that business as you
so look, the co-op is part, for those of you who don't know, the co-op is part social enterprise, part commercial enterprise. It's literally owned by the members who shop and engage with the co-op. We don't have shareholders. That makes it a very interesting business because I use the term beautifully frustrating. It's a beautifully frustrating business because at its heart, it is a cooperative and it wants to do right by people, its members and others in the community. But it operates in incredibly dynamic and competitive sectors. Food, convenience, funeral care, insurance, wholesale, legal services, and most of the businesses we compete against are highly commercially driven businesses. So you've got a business over here that wants to go build schools, and you got a business over here that wants to deliver total shareholder return. And the dynamic it creates is really, really interesting. It's a fantastic business to work for, but it presents its challenges.
Yeah, I'm sure. And that's kind of what I wanted to get into first.
Yes.
Because a lot of what's not talked about is how you set up a retail media network.
Yes.
Obviously you went through the process over the last couple of years of setting up the co-op media network.
Yes, yeah.
So what did you find when you first arrived?
Yeah.
And what were your ambitions? And then crucially, how did you get everybody aligned
behind
the idea?
I don't want to take credit for starting the co-op media network. I did not. It existed when I joined the business, but in a very different guise. When I joined the co-op business, the media network had 2 FTEs, 2 people in it, but it was delivering somewhere in the magnitude of around 11 to 14 million in profit. The profit margin in that business on retail media was exceedingly high. And what I did, I looked at it, knowing what we did at the Very Group, now the Very Group, I sat down, Matt Hood, I sat him down, Matt Hood, who runs the food business, and I said, how many people do you have in the food business? And he said, 55,000, yeah? And I said, what's your profit per FTE? What profit per person do you make? And he told me the number. And it might have been a 4-digit number. I think it was a 3-digit number. Okay. And I said, the profit per FTE in retail media for me is big.
7 million.
Yeah, it's about 7 or 8 million. I think it might have been, it was around 7 or 8 million. Yeah. I said, do more of that, yeah? Because you're making $3,000 and over here we're making 7 million, right, per person.
So getting to that financial
and there's something about, for those of you who work in marketing, a big part of your success in the sector, in this place you work in this category, is being able to translate your language into things that commercial drivers of the commercial parts of the business can understand. So the managing directors, the CFOs, the CEOs, when we can talk about what we do and deliver in a way that moves the needle commercially in significant and substantive ways, things happen. As a result of that conversation, Matt got behind it, the guy who leads the food business, which by the way is a £7 billion business. We relaunched the media network, and we've been on fire ever since.
Yeah, it's been amazing. And so that's how you kind of got the co-op interested.
Yes.
Then obviously you've got to get brand marketeers interested.
Yes.
You've got to differentiate your offering as a media offering versus others. So can you talk to me a little bit about how you've done that? And the
Yes. So one of the things we did, and this is interesting because as a person who came from an FMCG marketing background, you understand proposition and the importance of proposition and clarity of communication of that proposition. We had an asset that was working incredibly well, but we didn't have a clear proposition. So one of the first things we did was say, okay, well, what makes us unique and what makes us different? And the answer was pretty clear from the onset, which was we're a convenience retailer with 2,500 stores. We're the most shopped shop in the UK, over 800 million transactions per annum. More people shop in a co-op than shop in any other place in terms of frequency of transaction outside of one retailer. And the people who come into a co-op shop in more other places than anywhere else. And so within that data set, we found that we had a really clear articulation of proposition. It was around convenience media. And convenience media is different because of the frequency of shop, the layout of the stores, the footprint of the stores, and the nature of the missions. And so we go to our partners and say, look, when your consumer is in the mission mindset of convenience, they're in a completely different space and place. And when they walk through those stores, they're thinking about engaging with your media in a very, very different way. And we see this in the recent Lumen results.
That's it. So let's just touch on those Lumen results. So we actually released that yesterday. Dean and Lumen released a joint survey which showed that actually advertising in the co-op has a bigger effect on consumers than elsewhere. Do you want to talk a little bit?
Yeah, look, and it makes sense. If you walk into a big shop, 100,000 square foot shop, and there are lots of media activations around that store, if you've gone there to grab milk or to grab dairy, eggs, there's a good chance you don't see 70% of the advertising in the store because it's so big. When you walk into a convenience retailer, it's very, very different. Most people who walk into that store are there for 7 to 9 minutes, but they walk almost every aisle. And as a result of, and also they walk in that store more frequently. So as a result of the frequency of shop, the nature of the shop itself, and the nature of the mission, what the Lumen results showed us was that from a attention standpoint, it was 3 times more. From a visibility standpoint, it was 2 times more. And from a recall standpoint, it was 4 times more than advertising that showed up in other stores. And that's because of the nature of the shop itself. We've been able to take that data and do some amazing things with partners and with you guys with respect to selling the difference and the point of difference of retail media in a convenience context. So it's been phenomenal for us.
So you've got a really interesting perspective on this because you're a brand guy, right?
Yes.
Who's brilliant at building consumer ideas and the identity. What role do you think retail media has in brand building?
Yes. Yeah, it's interesting because you guys have heard all the theory, right? 50% of marketing works. I just don't know which half. There's a long and the short of it. 60% in brand building, 40% in things that are performance. My point of view, I think, is maybe provocative but very simple. All marketing should perform, all of it. The only question is in what time horizon. That's really the only question. When I think about retail media, what's really interesting for me personally about retail media is its ability to do 2 things. One, to engage and interact with a shopper, a consumer, literally at the point of purchase, right? So to your point, the point you made earlier on stage, if I want to buy something, irrespective of where I buy it, the one thing I have to do is go to the shop. I gotta go to the shop, whether it's the virtual shop or the physical shop. That's right. Retail media reaches out and touches the shopper and the consumer at that point of purchase, so that's one. The other is, it has the ability in a convenience context to influence the way a person thinks because they're more open to what they're buying. A lot of times those shopping missions are distressed, but sometimes they're inspirational. People are looking for or to be inspired. What am I having for dinner tonight? I don't know. So in that context, you're more open. The receptivity of retail media is significantly higher in that context. We've seen it work incredibly well for us. And from a brand building standpoint, look, my view is brand is a commercial driver as well as a driver of enterprise value for the business. And it's an opportunity in a retail context and in a shopper marketing context to introduce and reintroduce your brand and your brand's proposition in a highly effective, highly resonant and highly receptive way.
Yeah, totally agree. And it's so interesting now, alongside the data that you're getting from the membership, I think it'd probably be worth touching a little bit about how that fuels some of the work that you're doing on the retail media side.
100%. So we've got partners like you guys and partners like LiveRamp who help us utilize our first party data. But maybe we're a little bit unlike other businesses in that because we're a co-op and because we don't have shareholders, because we don't have a dividend, our flywheel works a little bit differently. So the way it works is we drive the strength of our membership proposition. That membership proposition drives people to engage with us, shop in store, engage with our legal services, our life services business. And then what happens as a result of that, as they become members, that data allows us to do two things. It allows us to make better business decisions within the business, put the right things in front of the right people at the right time, but also, importantly, it allows us to then monetize that data in a way through things like retail media that allows us to take that outsized profit, and instead of moving that profit to shareholders, we reinvest it back into the proposition. We literally hand it back in the form of pricing, in the form of better proposition, in the form of money can't buy experiences at Co-op Live, back to our members and customers.
It's so powerful.
Yeah, it's quite impressive.
And so where do you see this going? You know, we're on the second year of this journey. How do you see the Co-op Media Network evolving? How do you see retail media evolving? What is the crystal balls?
Yeah. So 5X for you and I, Sam.
That's right.
Look, there's some big numbers that Sam put on the screen. So I'm looking at Dean and the rest of my colleagues here, kind of sort of going, we would like a piece of that, please. Look, I think the CAGR growth rate that you showed is impressive, but not necessarily surprising. The reality is the media market right now is incredibly fragmented. All of us are searching for growth in any way we can get it. And we're doing that in an environment where people's pocketbooks are challenged. You got inflation coming through this year at 5%. We're not making more humans, right? So then the question becomes, if there are not more people to buy more stuff, how are we going to drive the sales line? We're going to have to take it competitively from other people. And I think one way to do that is to execute at the point of purchase incredibly well. And in my mind, retail media, and particularly from a convenience standpoint, allows us to do that. We're uniquely placed, and I think because of that uniqueness and differentiation in the marketplace from a media standpoint, that's going to serve us quite well over the next several years.
Totally agree. Amazing insights, Kenyatte.
Yeah, thanks.
And but before you go, I can't help having a bit of fun.
Please.
So would you be up for doing a game of Would You Rather?
Yeah, I can't say no, Sam. I'm on the stage
great.
now,
I've got you
gotta
now.
say
yeah. Okay, so I've got some serious ones, some not so serious.
Okay, cool.
All right. Okay. So would you rather upper funnel or lower funnel?
Oh, wow. You're gonna ask a CMO that question. So I would rather both is the answer.
Can't have that one.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be my answer. My answer is both. I'll tell you what. If I had to choose. Yeah. I would say.
You were starting a business.
Yeah. If I was starting a business, I would say upper. If I was starting a business, I would say upper. And the reason I say that is because I think it helps to drive the efficiency of the lower.
Very
true. So one, in my mind, helps drive the efficiency of the lower, which is critically important.
All right.
Yeah.
Would you rather a guaranteed £200,000 or a 50-50 chance at $1 million?
50-50 chance at $1 million.
It's got to be, isn't it?
Yeah, 50-50 chance at $1 million.
Okay.
Because I don't have the extra 200 grand now.
Okay.
So I wouldn't feel like I lost anything.
Yeah, fair. ROAS or return on investment?
Return on investment. And the reason why is because return on investment in my mind, includes ROAS. Because return on advertising spend is an investment. By the way, if anyone in your organization positions media as spend, correct them immediately, because it's not. It's an investment in the future of the business.
Yeah.
So for me, it's return on investment.
All right, my final question.
Yeah.
You're quite a fashionable guy.
I do what I can. So.
Loafers or trainers?
Oh, wow. I would say loafer, particularly if they're Bass Swedes.
Very good.
Yeah.
Big thank you to Kenyatte, and thank you for kicking this off.